Program complete. Auto-engage time sequence synchronized.
Hello, and welcome to this very special interview. As part of the process preparing to create the Star Trek New Horizons documentary, I interviewed members of the development team. This interview was a group interview I did back in November 2025 with Russ, G-Man, Kerry, and Locutus, each of whom brought a different perspective to the development process. Join me as we build off of their individual interviews and dive into Star Trek New Horizons development and direction. So, how has the development and administration of Star Trek New Horizons, as well as its community, changed over the years?
The time has brought many changes. In the beginning, we were just a bunch of Star Trek nerds who poured every free minute into the development. After a short while, we became more organized, and within a year, we had established proper structures, departments with leaders who had authority over the modders in them. Later, we wanted to create more democratic structure and founded a STNH council, which included anyone who was active enough to and gave everyone equal voting rights for mod-related development decisions. Over time, more mods joined us. The most well-known is the Star Wars SWFR mod, but also we had a Warhammer, a Babylon 5, and a Stargate mod in development. But except the Star Wars mod, none of the others were released. Within the wider community, modding community, we created the PDG Council, which is higher than the STNH Council and the authority that has to serve an oversight body between the different projects, sharing knowledge and resolving conflicts. And to the management, during that time, besides Git, like GitHub or GitLabs, we also had access to Jira and managed the mods development through it for a while. But due to limit the access and high costs, we had to stop using that. 2 years ago, when the activity on the internal server slowed down, Russ emerged as an excellent lead developer, and I'm still glad he took that role. Russ?
Yeah, I'm smiling at that. Yeah, thank you. You're absolutely right. I think the big thing that I've noticed change when I first joined, it was very much dominated by several key voices who were very determined and laid down the structure and the layout of how the mod was going. We've seen a lot of change in that area over the years, and I think the cool thing about now is it's a much more democratic, everyone's free to have their opinions type of environment. We're very much more community driven. Everyone on the council has an equal say. There's no kind of case of overruling or telling people that's a direction we're not going to go, which was something that perhaps was more when I first joined. Everyone chips in, and like I mentioned in my personal interview, when we did the TNG mod, it was a real case of everyone chipping in with ideas and joining and laying and getting involved together. And it was just it just feels a happier kind of place to be now, and that's one of the things that I've noticed that's changed over the years. We're all a lot more relaxed about things. We manage it together, and there's a lot more kind of a corporation now. Even those who aren't involved in the council, I think, hopefully feel the ability to pitch in with ideas and things like that, and then it gets worked on. There's no kind of I'm not going to do that just because I say so type of approach anymore, which is pretty cool.
I think Science Locutus is already over many years part of the mod, more or less. So maybe he has also his own hue at that to that point. How we changed it.
I actually don't, because I just took part in the translation and nothing more above it. No? So I can't really tell something on that.
Have you noticed any changes in how we, as a kind of a dev team, listen to kind of the beta testers and you guys a little bit? Hopefully, you may not think so, but hopefully you can see that we try and listen a little bit harder to what you guys have to say. I know that a number of your ideas made it into the mod, and
that is actually true. Over the years, it felt like the communication was much more direct than compared to at the beginning. Yes. Yeah, it's much easier to say is especially the suggestions channel. When you think something is wrong, it was changed. One example I have on the top of my head is the Borg torpedo. What's it called? Not the interspatial one.
The transbasic torpedo.
No, that's the anti-Borg torpedo. I mean the Borg torpedo.
Oh, my bad.
Is it
But
the magnetic charge? Something along those lines.
that's the first one you get, and later on you get another torpedo type where's the Borg sphere on it. And I know I first said it doesn't make sense for every species to have it because it's literally the Borg torpedo. It would be the same if, I don't know, Borg would have quantum torpedoes or so. And many years ago, it kind of was, yeah, well, kind of ignored. And when I said it back later, well, it needed a bit of discussion because many didn't know about it seemingly, but then it was changed, at least a little bit, if I'm right. If I'm right.
Yeah, Rust took a lot of efforts to make everybody happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about making me happy. It was wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, continuity.
At least a little bit. I mean, okay, that there are some other stuff where Borg still have some other stuff too as well. Okay, that's about the coding and so on, and it's just unnecessary to fix that because it's unnecessary workload. It doesn't have any impact. But that, yeah, at first I was just asking why and if it can't have another picture or so, but no, it was just left like it.
But
I don't know, a few years back it was changed by Russ, I guess.
But today it's much easier to make such suggestions. They will find its way to a newer version of Star Trek New Horizons, I guess.
Yes, exactly. That's my point. When I re-entered closed beta, I did mention it again, and then it was changed.
Yeah, the closed beta is managed by Carrie and Russ itself.
One correction to that. The beta is managed by me, Russ, and Orion.
Orion too, right? Oh God, I forgot Orion. Everyone's forgot Orion. He's like Raj from Big Bang Theory.
So it sounds like, just to summarize, that things have become a lot more kind of democratic rather than having a team with, let's say, of like a business structure where you've got one leader at the top that then tells the next layer down and tells the next layer down what's happening. It sounds like it's more of like a community also has a voice within the development. That sounds interesting. You mentioned the Star Trek New Horizons Council and the PDG Council, and I want to delve into those a little bit more as well. So what is the purpose of each council and how do they operate?
Each modding team within PDG has their own council. That was one of our just kind of stipulations if you wanted to join our community, is that it can't be a single person dictatorship type of approach. You have to have like a democratic council to promote, you know, a community spirit. It's one of the big things that we're keen to do is not only just be a modding community but a modding group as well. So yeah, each group has their own council who are responsible for the day-to-day management decisions and interactions and way forward for their own mod. Star Trek New Horizons is obviously the biggest one of the group, given that it's the biggest in size. We've got quite an active council. Whilst not everyone on the council is fully active at any time, we've got a big enough council that we have, you know, interactions and almost, you know, daily discussions in there talking about things that we're working through. And that council is typically made up of the leads in each area. So we have the events, localization, PR, testing, 2D, 3D, mechanics. All the lead players in each of the areas kind of form that council, and they take care of the day-to-day running and advancement of their individual mod. The PDG council is a more select group of individuals who've kind of got the structure of kind of taking PDG as a group forward, making decisions that kind of impact the wider community. And again, they're made up for a lot of similar individuals from them, but each sub-mod group is represented on the council. And again, the PDG council won't take decisions for individual mods. The only time they'll get involved there is if something was happening that was kind of bringing PDG as a group into some sort of conflict. So yeah, that's the typical structure that we had. It was an idea that I know that G-Man was heavily involved in setting up, and I think it's really been one of the positive advancements of how we've managed things. It's kind of given us some structure, and it's kind of, I guess, promoted that sense of community that we were trying to progress with. And again, PDG Council itself doesn't tend to get involved in too many areas. It tends to be fairly quiet place unless something comes up that we need to get involved in, or a direction that we want to take the community in.
Okay, then I guess, G-Man, as a member of the council, do you have anything to add to that?
I guess that answer pretty good and more complete as I could ever talk. But I think what is maybe not saying yet what means PDG. PDG is the entire community for make mods for Stellaris, and it's called a paradoxical development group. Anyone who wants to mod can join and make a mod, and everyone inside the PDG group will help to make this mod better or alive or whatever. And it's sad that we have today just one active mod, which is the Star Trek New Horizons. The Star Wars mod is carry driven, maybe sometime anytime will come back online. But today the PDG Council is sleeping. Well, we have no other mods in our current development situation, just the STNH, and this is no need to have this the second council. So just we have STNH council right now.
Okay, so you've mentioned that typically it's kind of the lead of each area or these leads are the people on the councils. So does each person then have a specific role within the council? Does the council itself has a structure, or is it more of a kind of everyone equal, one voice, one vote? We're making a decision, and so everyone has equal weight on this decision.
So the way we originally kind of were structured is into sort of departments. Loosely, so you'd have an events department, mechanics department, 2D, 3D, and then we introduced additional departments such as testing and our PR department. So each area has a lead. So typically, because you specialize in a certain area, you bring forward ideas that are more relevant to the area that you naturally work in. So, but that doesn't stop. For example, if Cutter, who looks after a lot of our 2D and UI work, comes to us with an idea to the council, then it's discussed of the same merit and the same opinion and the same level of priority as something that I might bring or G-Man might bring. So whilst we have our areas that we focus on, because that's the areas that we're typically most skilled in, the council has an equal voice. I might be currently leading in a lot of things on the mod, but my voice doesn't carry any more than any of the other guys. If they came to with an idea or they wanted to take it the mod in a direction, we would all have that discussion around it and work on it together. We wanted to very much get away from the idea of one person just saying how things should be and how they wanted things to be, because as you can imagine, that's quite a hard group to work in. That leads to people feeling that they're not heard or they're not listened to, and that's kind of one of the big things that I'm really keen that we carry on with, because there's been times when it's not always felt that way. So one of the key things that I want to always listen to what everyone else has to say, even if I put forward an idea and someone doesn't like it, then that's fine. That's the idea of the group, and it works pretty well. Ever since we've come up with this new structure, I think it's really benefited, and it's felt, certainly from the council point of view, a really nice place to be, and everyone that I know working on the council, I would consider really strong people and people that you could just talk to, which is really nice.
Okay, that makes sense. So can you talk about what kind of decisions, I guess, do the council make? And if you could give an example of one of those as well, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah. To be honest, in the recent time, usually it was the Paradox patch pace. They bring patches and we have no idea what is in, and it comes suddenly and it crashes our rework, mostly Rust reworks. So usually we bring questions or decisions. We want to find a decision related to the mod development. So as like when we have done a season or a patch, the question is what we do next. As first, what is the theme? What is the topic? This is a good question to the council, that we will find a topic what is maybe important to make, maybe interesting to make, maybe just it's in to focus for Dominion, or it's in to focus for Borg, or As like initial, the cast for Uhura was died back then. I had the idea we make a legend topic. So that season we made Star Trek New Horizons Legends and make a picture of all these. And I really loved the idea of improving the heroes. And all this is a question for the council and how to figure it out what we could make. That's usually the thing. And this leads what Russ said to every one of its department to make things for that idea, for that topic. This was usually the process how the council worked. Then the work began. What is not? Yeah, things what department can solve by itself. In localization, as example, how to phrase or rephrase that kind of text in another language. This is really not a topic for the council. Yeah. Anyone else? Maybe I forgot something.
No, I guess it sounds like you've covered everything. I want to go kind of back to the paradoxical group for a moment before we dive back into Star Trek New Horizons specifically and just focus on the mod. So you mentioned some of the other mods that have been in development during the lifetime of PDG itself. You mentioned Star Trek, Star Wars, Stargate, and Warhammer mods so far. How did you recruit new members to PDG, or did you find that they came to you? And what is that process like, and how has that changed over the years?
I would say it's basically same as every year as we did it in the past. So we do it today. We just make a shout out in the community Discord, and I'm really glad we have Carrie for that. Maybe he can give us a shout out what he do for that. But in general, I can say it's just a call for helpers, and sometimes we find some. Yeah. Carrie, do you have some specific insights to that?
With new members, it's mostly just trying to get people. Well, what I've been doing recently is just trying to grab the people who show interest. Because sending a recruitment form is all good, but it's not many out there that is experienced. So we just need to go back to our roots, really, where we're helping people learn on the job type thing.
Okay, so it's a little bit of people saying, oh, I kind of want to help, or I want to create another mod, and then PDG stepping in and helping to give them the tools and the training to start that process.
Pretty much, yeah. That's the route we've gone down recently, anyway. Because we're simply recruiting experienced people is harder than it used to be, from my understanding.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Let's now just focus on Star Trek New Horizons itself. And the first thing that I want to do is walk through the process of adding something major to the mod. Something like a new race or faction, like a new event, or like a new mechanic, or an entirely new mechanic to Star Trek New Horizons. Is there a set process within Star Trek New Horizons or the Star Trek New Horizons Council for presenting new ideas to be added to Star Trek New Horizons?
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways that we normally go about it. So small mechanics or small event ideas, typically they wouldn't necessarily be brought to the council because again that typically sits within the event team area. So if it's a small story event, they typically get worked on. Those ideas tend to be either something that will come up organically or something that we think about, or it'll be something that the community has suggested or is really keen to have in, and we'll add that in. Well, then if we need, so with every event you need to have the 2D work. Potentially the bigger the event gets, you need to drag in more departments to assist, so then that's something you then bring to potentially the council leads to say, I need some additional 2D art, or if you need to bring in a new species or something like that, then it'll be a conversation that potentially I'll have with G-Man to say, are you able to help create some more 2D species profiles for me? And it'll kind of go on from there. Bigger ideas, however, typically tend to get broken about and brought at the council. So if you want to bring in a sort of a mod changing mechanic, it'll go to the council to get their view on it, to see whether people think it's a good idea or not. And if it gets greenlit, then often again it's going to be spanning multiple departments, so you'll need some assistance from 2D, 3D localization to make sure it gets done properly, and therefore it kind of gets brought up through those paths, discussed. Each division within the team has their own channel within our Discord server. So again, ideas and discussions are often brought out and discussed in those in more detail. So the idea gets brought up. If it gets the go ahead, then it will kind of be taken into the department to be worked on. It then gets developed, pushed through, and then it goes off into the beta. And then we have a separate kind of dedicated beta channel, in which case we'll then talk it through with the beta testing team, get their feedback on it. They'll report any bugs with it, any issues with it, anything they see that does or doesn't work. Because I think one of the things we've got to be careful of is, if an idea works well in your head, does it work well on, in mechanic and in the game itself? And it's really handy to get someone who hasn't kind of lived and breathed it to play it and make sure, does it make sense? Is this, is it doing what you want it to do? So yeah, there are a few ways that a new idea will kind of make its way from kind of just a thought into something bigger.
Okay, so let's say I've brought an idea to you and it's a mod changing idea. Let's say also that the council has decided that we're going to accept this suggestion. How is then kind of the project management side dealt with? How do you keep track of saying, okay, here was the original idea that was proposed, and it's got several steps, it's got lots of different like fiddly bits that we need to implement. Who's then responsible for overseeing that entire process? Would it be the person who originally suggested the idea?
So the biggest one that I can think of is the TNG mod. So that was an idea and a concept that was kind of brought up and discussed by a number of different people. We used Git, and I think we also had a Trello board. We had basically a development board. I can't remember where it was hosted now. I think it might have been Git. That basically you can pin the ideas and have them on what is effectively, you have all the different user stories that come out through it. So I don't know, create the starting conditions for each empire, create the map. You have all of them listed down, and then individuals will work on them and be assigned to them. And it's typically the role of the project lead to keep a track of it, because that's where they come in and where they have that bigger picture of what's going on. So that's kind of moved and just kept track of by the project lead at the time, and then it gets managed through the different teams. It'll be assigned to a different person. They're then responsible for providing the updates for that piece of work. Smaller ideas, we don't typically do that way because it's quite a time-consuming event, and obviously a lot of these tools that really do this kind of project management work are quite costly, and that's money that we don't have. So yeah, but it worked really well for the TNG mod as kind of the prime example where you had so many different things that needed to be done that you needed to keep track of them, what stage they're at, and then kind of track them across the lifestyle of that particular project.
Okay. G-Man, do you have anything to add to that?
As example, the most additions or changes or whatever it's added to the mod isn't that big as like the TNG submod Russ suggested and made. Usually it's a smaller type. So, and all these smaller type of additions don't need that full membership attend to that. It's usually to that one who want to make it, just present the idea to the council, and the council is discussing about that. Usually everyone brings the idea up and everyone is excited about that, and that one will create it. And maybe he need help for different parts. Usually you need a localization team. These involved in any decisions, so they have to make a lot of the work, and most of the work. It's usually the idea giver will make the most of the work. All the other departments will just follow the workload, what they will get over the development. So I guess it's not often that so many different departments have to work together as like at the TNG expansion we made, or in this case Russ made, to be honest. Thank Russ.
Well, I definitely shall then. Perfect. I have another question before we move on a little bit to then kind of presenting this to the public. There are several of you working on the mod at the same time, adding different components, adding different parts. Do you ever find that you have to worry about conflicting versions of either things like the code base that you write, or conflicting versions of the mod itself? So for example, you download the repository, you add some changes, you go to upload and then you find that maybe in that meantime somebody else has uploaded something else. Do you ever have this kind of conflict situation happen in the development of the mod?
Sometimes, I mean, we're all pretty good at working on when we're working on things. We tend to have our areas of focus, so we don't typically. I mean, we use either Fork or Gitkraken or one of those type of applications, and it very quickly tells you whether you put a conflict in. And sometimes it happens, particularly around when they're putting out a major patch. For example, I know that a number of times that Cutter, who looks after the UI, sometimes him and myself are making changes at the same time, and it causes Gitkraken which is the tool that I use, to have a bit of a moan at me that we've edited or tried to do the same thing at the same time. But it's about communication. If I'm working on something, it's just a matter of saying I'm focusing on this, or if he's working on something, he'll just ping me in the background saying I'm updating the UI and that, and then we know to leave it alone. It can happen. We're all pretty good at now, I think, at working and avoiding treading on each other's toes when we're working. But it can happen. But then if it does, then as project lead, it usually comes down to me to just make sure it's all straightened out and make sure that the right versions are in. But yeah, we're all pretty experienced at handling it now and managing it around each other and just talking things through.
Okay, that's perfect. The next question that I wanted to ask you, let's pretend that this major feature this hypothetical feature that we're adding to Star Trek New Horizons, kind of reaching the end of the development phase. Is the next step beta testing? Or do you first go into localization of the text that you've added for this new mechanic or these new events or this new large change?
From my understanding, when new major things get added, it essentially gets tested locally by the person who's started it. First of all, he does what he can do, and then if he needs like a new ship or a bit more advice on fleshing it out, then he contact, I don't know, Russ or another department head to give him advice on how do I flesh this out before I add it onto the GitHub.
Okay. I assume development is typically done in English, and so that would be getting that bit that is being added to the end of the development phase. Would you already, during the development phase, start with translation work for other languages such as German or French?
I would say that one's more Locutus's area of answering.
Honestly, it's translated at the moment or shortly after. The changes go to the development branch. I look at Git if something is added, and then I translate it into German. And Gargantuan, the one guy who translates into Russian, he does an excellent job as well with keeping up to date with all his translations. Everything new comes up is translated within a week. And I try to handle it the same, but sometimes I overlook something. Yeah.
Have you ever?
But that's not something as a step in an order, right? You don't implement something and then translation and then testing and so on. It's a flowing thing. It's not necessary to be something which has an order like in a company or so. At least it feels to me that way.
Locutus, just like chatting. Locutus, do you had ever a chat with Gargantua about his reason why he is so impressive fast or completed?
No, I actually don't. Oh, did I? I think I tried to ask him.
Yeah. I have the answer, and it was so funny. He really just translate the entire mod for one reason. He wants to play in his own language.
Yeah, I know that, but I thought you meant why he's so fast at translating new stuff.
Oh.
He's, I mean, right now there's no good way to get I don't know, a notification or so if something new is implemented that needs to be translated. So what I do is I go into Fork and just look at the commits, at the changes. If there's something with German, I take a look, file it is, and then I go in there, search for it, and translate it. That's the best solution I came up with. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, how he works is a mysterium, sure. But
I mean,
I'm really glad we have good translators as like Locutus or like Gargantua for Russia, Locutus for German. We have, unfortunately, Stellaris don't deliver all these options we would like to have. A Star Trek game should be in any language of for the entire world.
I mean, managing the translations is in Zoom's department, and he does a really good job at it because there are a lot of issues regarding translations. It's not simply just translating, and he does that kind of stuff then.
Yeah, I guess if I remember correct, there was a question about where is to start with a translation. It's have to be always in English. Anything what is to implement first
Yeah.
is always in English. There is no other option. This is the main consensus that it have to be understandable for anyone in the mod team, and then to translate from English in any language. This is maybe also an important information.
Okay, perfect. My next question is kind of getting into the beta testing, let's say, of this function that we've just added. So is this a set you have a development phase and then you wrap up development on the whole and then you say, okay, now I want to have this mass tested, and so it's then sent into the beta branch for the mod? Or is the process more of like, oh, I'm currently in the process of developing this function, I can at least get Star Trek New Horizons to run on the version that I'm testing. Beta testers, can you start testing this from right now? And I will then continue adding bits in, making it more complex, balancing things. When do you decide to bring the beta testers in to as part of this, adding a new large feature?
So we've got a couple of ways of doing this. So we're kind of fortunate in that we've got a pretty good beta testing community. Some like Locutus are pretty always active and they're just constantly there testing things and you know these guys are really good at picking issues, pinging me to say, look, they found something that's there. Other times, typically around big releases or version changes, typically brings people back into testing the beta. So we'll have individuals who typically are more active around major changes, and they'll kind of return back to the team and get involved at that stage. So we've got two main ways of doing it. One is let's say we've got a version change. So the 4 dot whatever version was the big one. We spend a lot of time internally getting the mod to run. We then typically do a round of internal testing, and this is what we call the compact patch, where we just effectively all we're doing is really just getting it to compatible with the new version. So then we'll spend a lot of time getting it up and running, and then typically the members of the PDG internal team have access to the dev branch. We'll test that as and when it's up and running. So Orion he's kind of like my my counterpart of, I'll put something in and he'll find the bug within it. He's just has that knack of being able to find these bugs, and it's just amazingly helpful having him around to kind of pick out where bugs and mistakes have been made. So he'll between myself and the team, we'll kind of make sure it's in a state that it's up and running. When it's at that point, we'll then release it to the beta team and we'll say, look, the compact patch has gone in. And typically we get a lot of interactions with the team at that point to point out things that are not running correctly, because it's just impossible for ourselves to test every single species, flow, and mechanic within the game. Now, typically there tends to be within the beta team individuals who are more specialized areas. For example, Locutus, I think, knows the Borg better than anyone that I know. Certainly, probably better than anyone in the dev team itself knows how that should work. So, we're quite heavily reliant on him to point out issues with the Borg that have stopped working. We've got players who play as the Federation with a lot of mechanics that need testing. It is difficult to get the whole thing tested, because we're reliant on the community of beta testers to help us with that. So we kind of get as much as we can tested, but there comes a point when you've got to release it to the general public to get a more wider view of what's wrong. The other approach is just all throughout the lifestyle, we'll be fixing bugs, we'll be fixing issues, we'll be adding small events in, and then it's really a kind of a case of releasing that into the beta as and when they're in a playable complete state, because people in the beta team are pretty much playing pretty regularly, so it's a case of getting those in and tested. What we do is we will release the patch notes to the beta team, and they'll play them away. So yeah, there's the two approaches. You've got the major releases, which you kind of try and pull everyone in to do some testing. You kind of release those on kind of more big chunks of patches, and then you have small little releases that are kind of going in constantly. My aim is to kind of keep the beta as close to the dev branch as possible, so that you're constantly getting it tested. But we're also limited by the version of Git that we run. We've only got a certain amount of kind of minutes that we can use to push our scripts from dev to beta, so you've got to be a little bit careful on how you manage that. If you do a lot of pushes, you might run out of minutes to run the script, because otherwise you're kind of moving into the next cost bracket. So you've got to manage it, and it's nothing more frustrating than kind of wanting to do some testing at the end of the month and you realize you run out of available minutes and you've got to wait till the next month. But yeah, those are the approaches, and we're very fortunate that we've got at least someone around testing most of the time.
Absolutely. So, Locutus, I want to ask you a little bit more about beta testing, and especially comparing when you play a game in order to beta test something or to test something versus when you just play a normal game of Star Trek New Horizons. When you're playing a beta testing version, do you play differently than how you would play normally?
I just try to remind myself when I normally played the last time. That must be the great multiplayer game, the Death Clash, the last. When was it? Several
time
years
ago
ago,
now.
I guess. Yeah.
2080, so around.
Yeah. So there you have it. I mean, you most likely have always something in your head that you need to focus on, like I don't know, is a certain tech coming up, which was the last time or so. And when you try to verify it, you play like normal, but sometimes then I use ticks per turn to speed it up a bit. Otherwise, you would sit hours just to verify one little thing. On the other side, last week, in fact, I tried out the Cardassians, and it was so much fun that instead of, I don't know, looking for half an hour, I played for 8 hours straight. Yeah.
Wow.
That's epic.
And
Wow.
suddenly it was 3 o'clock in the morning. So, okay, I can go to bed now. I don't want to, but I should. Yeah. And that's the thing. Sometimes you start, I don't know, a day, 20 games just to look for one certain spot if some event is triggering or so. Or, yeah, especially event-loaded races like the Federation can be very tricky. If a bug is being reported somewhere and it's been asked that bug can be verified, you try to replicate it. So if the person have a guideline to how it can be replicated, it's easier. If not, well, then you need time on your hands, and that's the big difference. You can enjoy the game in the way as you normally would. On the other hand, if you already that deep that you know certain mechanics and so on, yeah, you just can experience a game once for the first time, and when you have several thousand hours of playtime, you see it differently.
Absolutely. So, Carrie, I wanted to ask you, because I believe you're also involved in some capacity with the beta team and administering the team as well. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about kind of the beta testing process as well.
So essentially, the beta testing team has like a set of rules they've got to follow pretty much. It's essentially we're not allowed to like switch factions suddenly unless they've been requested to by a dev like Russ in this particular occasion. And organization wise, we try to do it similar to how it is publicly with forums, and they've got an agreement that they've got to sign stating that anything in beta stays in beta channel and pretty much that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So let's say, for example, we've added in this new feature this hypothetical feature that I've been using as an example. How long would you say it would usually take to test a feature like this?
Typically, I would say, depending on the size of the feature, typically a week if it's a simple event, and then possibly if it's like a major patch or compatibility patch, I would say a month tops, and as if we don't discover bugs in the beta testing.
Okay, I see. So I want to also ask you, while we're talking about beta testing, what makes a good beta tester?
Honestly, one that is essentially wanting to beta test, not just get early access. Because if you're just for early access, then you're no good to us, because we don't want people to become a beta tester just to get early access and not tell us about bugs the public could easily spot,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
absolutely.
I think beta testing is the most simplest way to support STNH development. So you can not coding, not writing events or mechanic, or do some art as like 3D, 2D music, even spoken words as like, how called it? Voice
Voice actor?
actor. Thank you. As like voice actor. You can just play and find certain things we on the search for and just report that. It's super simple. So just join if you want to improve the game as beta tester and report all the things they are ugly or maybe not good or for sure bugs, and then it's already done. Then you are a beta tester. It's pretty simple to me to say that, because I'm really, really bad beta tester. So I think it's for everyone possible to make that, as long you can write reports.
Okay, that's perfect. Locutus, I mean, you've been part of the beta testing since nearly the beginning. I mean, I do know that you've taken a break in the middle, but you have done a lot of beta testing over the years. What kind of qualities do you think makes you a good beta tester?
Well, as Grizzle already said, you need to report things, and also Carrie mentioned it. Don't just use your early access for that. But what's not necessarily required, and I think it's also important, is that you don't have to be experienced in either Stellaris or the New Horizons mod, because this way you can get some fresh insights of a person who just starts the game, because you definitely play differently if you, I don't know, just started it than compared to someone who played it a lot. And it's difficult to have that fresh view, you know?
Mindset is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, that's the important part, to be curious also. You want to find out something. If you just, I don't know, just play it to play and just go your way, and I don't know, maybe you see a bug, maybe you don't. And if you see something and you maybe don't care because you think, yeah, it's not that important, or oh, it's just one letter wrong, not that important, maybe someone else fixes it. That's a real mindset problem, and you have to report that as well. I stumbled across myself a lot, actually, because when you've already made many reports and then you see spelling error, yeah, okay, yeah, that's not that important. Nowadays I fix it myself.
Absolutely. Since you're also on the localization team, it must be nice to have access to that when you can't find that kind of bug. Russ, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Orion in the previously about being a very good beta tester and really able to find your bugs. Is there any reason why you think that is?
He'll probably hate me for saying this, but he's got this ability that he can just go through. So take an example of there was an issue where we changed so many lines of code for the main compat patches, and there was just a single file in there that was causing the game to crash. And he's got this amazing ability to do, and there are other people who've got it as well. I know G-Man and Cutter have also done the same thing in the past, but he's got this ability to go through each of the files in turn and look and cut them out and see at what point the game crashes. He's done a fantastic job over the years, and he's kind of bit of an unsung hero in terms of finding and spotting issues in the code that because I'm looking at the code and doing it, it's sometimes difficult for me to spot these issues and where they are, because I'm looking at it in such a level of detail that you can't see the wood for the trees, if people know what that saying it means. But he's able to kind of spot the problem and spot where it's, and point it. He said, like, he points me in the right direction. Said, like, I think it's in somewhere within here, and that's just a huge help to me, because then I can then go brilliant, and then I can kind of hone in and find out where the problem is. I don't know how he manages to do it. I think it's just a level of patience that you must have naturally just to go through it. He's also very good at looking at different scenarios, and yeah, he's definitely the bug master or the bug buster that is really helpful. And yeah, bug wrangler. And sometimes it's kind of, you'll be working on something for ages, and you get a ping from him. You're like, oh no, what's he found? What bugs he found? And you kind of go, yes, what is it? And he goes, I was testing this and I found this bug. Did you know about it? And I'm like, but without him, so many issues would have crept through. That it's just really helpful. He's just got that ability to find things. It's like and once he gets on a problem, he does not stop until he's found it. So because he works in, I think he's in Finland or somewhere in Scandinavia, so the time difference is slightly different between here and the UK where I am.
It's Finland.
It is. Oh well, yeah. I wonder where he's really. He never says much about himself, but he's just there working on it. And then the next morning, I'll log back into Discord after finally growling at it, not getting it to work, and going away and getting some sleep. He'll crop up the next day, and I'll read a message from him saying, "Oh, I found where it was." It's just like, yay.
I mean, as a developer, that must be extremely helpful to have somebody who kind of, that's maybe safety net is the wrong word, but somebody who is there kind of to catch those bugs for you and to provide that kind of help.
Absolutely, yeah. It's hugely helpful, and there's a lot of guys in the team that can do that and are really good at that. But yeah, it's massive, because when you're working on something and you're kind of so focused on coding it and getting it right, it's so easy just to miss things. So yeah, I would know what to do without the guys.
We often see on Discord applications or forums that especially Carrie will post saying, hey, we're looking for people to join the dev team, including beta testers. For people who are not on Discord, perhaps anybody who hears this clip on YouTube, for example, where would be the best place for them to sign up as beta testers?
Have to be
Pretty
on
much.
Discord.
You'd have to join our Discord eventually, but I pretty much post it on Reddit and Facebook quarterly normally. So essentially, you just fill out the exact same Google form. Me, Russ, or Orion will have a look at it, and we'll eventually contact you. But you would have to join our Discord because that's where most of our bug reporting has moved to. Because it used to be all done via Google Forms, but that become too much of a headwork looking at Google Forms and then jumping over to Discord, jumping over to Steam to look at bug reports there as well. So we tried to focus it all onto one place, so Russ doesn't have to look that far, Cutter doesn't have to look in multiple places, and so on.
Definitely makes sense to me, so that way you can save a lot of time with that. And for anybody listening, you've heard it here. If you want to fill in the form, you will need to join Discord, but an excellent way to support the dev team and the mod as a whole. So I wanted to move on a little bit now, and this mod is constantly changing, it's constantly developing, it's sometimes constantly being forced to develop by changes to Stellaris. And I wanted to ask you kind of, how do you balance kind of this act of adding new things to the mod, as well as things like bug fixes, and then also compatibility issues due to updates Stellaris? Do you treat all of these different updates and changes equally, or do you prioritize tasks? How is that dealt with by the dev team?
I just think Russ should answer for the current state. I can answer for the past process. So what should be the first?
I think maybe let's talk about the past process first, and then we'll move to the current one.
Yeah, that evolved over the time. we used to have Harold, who made a gigantic matrix, everything, literally everything, spread across the multiple sheets that calculated into a mega sheet. That was our full balance system with file output for STNH. Science version 3.x something that drifted out of balance, and we became a very hard to situation to manage that, and it was really terrible for us, I guess. So Russ, how do you manage that balance issues science then?
Yeah, I mean, balance is kind of a big issue because so many changes. I mean, imagine if Paradox themselves of the vanilla version of Stellaris are still struggling to even get balance right, even in 4.1 whatever they are now. They haven't got balance working. So, as you can imagine, if they're struggling to do it, then given the size and the scale of our mod, it's become something that's really difficult. So you've got to kind of scale it against the existing sheets. So those sheets that Harold put together are still kind of used as the baseline, but because we've kind of evolved so far beyond them, it is difficult to keep things in balance. And I think I won't go into it because it's not my area to spoil, but there's some really exciting things to come there, which I'll let other people go into in more detail. But in terms of prioritizing what gets done first for the mod, so for me, it's always a case of prioritizing compatibility so that after a vanilla updates, people can go back in and play. Because for me, I think the most important thing is that we keep allowing the people who want to play the mod to play the mod. So that always comes first for me. Get the game compatible, and any changes to compatibility come first, and then it's looking at the major bugs that need to be addressed. So again, it's kind of about making sure people can play the game, because without people playing the game, then we're just, I don't know, we're just playing, ourselves, and it's just, it's not what we're here to do. And then it's looking at new content, because again, if we let the mod go stale without new content, new things in, then again that's going to affect people coming back to play. So that then takes the next level of priority. And then I guess it's smaller bugs and smaller issues that kind of get addressed off the back of that. So it's a sad, again, fact of life that some of the smaller bugs don't always get addressed as quickly as some people want, because again, we've got a balanced priority of making sure that the wider mod is updated. We're kind of bringing new things in to keep refreshing content. If we had a massive team and an endless supply of resources, then we could kind of concentrate on all of it at once and it'd all get equal priority. But we've got to focus really on making sure that people can play the game and keep coming back to us and doing it. Otherwise, it's so easy. You look at the Steam store, there's so many mods that start out with great potential but don't make it because they don't get the updates they need and they don't get that regular attention. So it would be really the worst state if New Horizons went that way. So yeah, you've got to prioritize keeping things running, keeping things updated, playable, and then everything else kind of falls in behind that, really.
I just want to say something I had announced before the interview, because at this certain point is maybe need to say Shaco has returned in development for Star Trek New Horizons for PDG and will fill the part we lost with Harold back then with the Matrix and fill the gap with a new tool, which is, I think, the mother of all balance tools. And I really can say it will blow your mind when you interview him in the next days, and you can see, or the world can see, what is possible in these days to make happen with the current technologies. And then with that, we can make a much better balance and a better Star Trek New Horizons experience, I guess.
Oh, that would be awesome. Was this the new kind of teaser you were teasing at the beginning?
Yeah, exactly. That is the thing we want to tease. And it's really huge. I cannot imagine by myself how huge everyone here was able to take a sneak peek and testing a bit. I'm working with Shaco for the development for that, but it's access limited by.
So we've talked about this balancing act that you have to do to keep the mods playable, to make sure that it doesn't go the way of the dinosaurs, and please definitely don't let it go the way of the dinosaurs if you can keep struggling. I was wondering, is there a process for deciding which changes or which edits that you've done to code, for example, or which elements are included in which patches and how that decision is made?
It's really a case of, I guess, depending what's ready at the time. So we always try and go with a kind of a base compact patch first out, with a kind of an aim of trying to get that out within a month, or even a couple. We got to a point where we were really quick on it at one point, but with the most recent Dolaris vanilla updates, it's taken longer because it's just been a bit more of a struggle to get a solid, stable base game. It's our first plan really is to get that stable out to the public, leaving it then a period of a couple of weeks to collect in all of the wider bug reports that come in, because, like I say, we as great job as the beta testers do, the wider public testing it is going to produce a lot more reports. So then we then do a series of hot fixes. We tend to do around 1 to 5 hot fixes per update, and that usually captures most of the major issues. Then after that, we kind of move to looking at the new features that the vanilla update brings and whether they need to be wrapped into the game. It's kind of a little bit sad to say that there's not many. I don't know whether you can think of any new features that Stellaris has brought since cloaking, really, that were a real must-have in the mod. They've not been anything really major that's come out that we felt really we need to get into the game as a core mechanic. But yeah, once the compact patch is coming, we then look at utilizing the improvements and the new features after that.
I would say there are two different kind of patches STNH gets or do. The first one is the compatibility patches based on the changes of the base game, and the other one is the I like to call it seasons of the thematically patches we will make. We organize the different topics in a kind of a main focus, as like the legends or the Picard decision of the new TV show back then, or as like assimilation as focus to the Borg, or the Ferengi and Orions and stuff like that with kind of greedy cultures. So it's two different types of patches we have. The compatibility ones and the topic driven ones.
So I wanted to ask, Star Trek New Horizons, basically to play the game, all you need is the base game Stellaris. Sometimes having the DLC will give you some nice smaller features, but the DLCs are not required. And I was wondering, why was that decision made so that anybody who just has the base game Stellaris without any of the downloadable content or the expansion packs or anything that Paradox puts out, none of that is required for the game? Can you talk about kind of how you came to this decision and why that was decided?
Yeah, this was back in 2016. To be honest, it was my fault. Some of the other developers were open to any option or all options, but I insisted that everyone who loves Star Trek should get the full experience. Some modders disagreed, but I believe the financial status shouldn't determine how much fun can have. I think this is still my opinion today, and I'm pretty sure Russ is also on that topic.
100%, yeah, 100%. Yeah, there are features that Stellaris kind of locks behind its DLC. I think one of our things we try and do is, if that is the case, then we kind of try to make our own version of it that players who don't have the DLC can play, so they don't feel like they're missing out. Because, like you say, Star Trek is, for me personally, has always been something that everyone should be able to enjoy, and we don't make any money, we don't take any money from it. We're doing it for the love of Star Trek, and it kind of feels like it should be something that should be accessible to anyone who wants to play and who loves Star Trek. It's it's something that when I joined was the policy, and I completely agree with it.
It was difficult as we started with that, and Paradox limited features behind. For example, for Ferengi, the Megacorp DLC make business buildings available for the player to build franchises on other foreigners' planets, and this is limited to the DLC. So we had to create a second faction, which is also called Ferengi, to make it available Ferengi to play for anyone who has not that particularly DLC. I guess we have just one or two exceptions from that policy. It's like the robots.
Kravik and Prelor?
Exactly. These two are machine empires, and that is, so far I correctly remember, still limited by that particular DLC, unfortunately.
Okay, so really it's accessibility and financial accessibility as well, so that everyone can kind of get the best game that they can. That definitely makes sense.
I should maybe add to that point. We don't get anything from anyone as like a fee from Paradox to attract people to Stellaris. So why we should do this in reverse to Paradox? They get their money for people buying the game, and we just make what we love. So it's no need to gate anything from what we love to people who will love that too.
Absolutely, absolutely. We were talking about not requiring the DLCs, and I kind of want to ask you a parallel question to that, but more about the information from Star Trek itself. So in the past, Star Trek New Horizons would add things primarily from Alpha Canon, and a lot of people would call for things from, oh, what about this book? Can we add in information, or can you add in information from this book series or from this other book series or from this comic or things like that? And I know that in the past, Star Trek New Horizons was really focused on Alpha Canon, specifically meaning kind of the shows and the films that we saw on both big and small screens as they were released to the public. More recently, though, people have noticed that there is some information from Beta Canon that has also been included within the mod. Can you talk a bit about the original decision to focus on Alpha Canon, and then also maybe when and why, or what led to the Beta Canon information being introduced to the mod?
It was a long time ago. In the beginning, canon accuracy was very important to us, but after the flood of new series and other content, at least I become more open to beta canon. A few years ago, I said that Star Trek New Horizons had grown so large and significant that, as like Star Trek Online, we could define our own canon and decide what fits into the mod and what doesn't. But players can choose what to use themselves. For example, someone made a submod that simply removed the Discovery ships and era from Star Trek New Horizons. And to be honest, I think that was a great idea. These kind of additions and submods outside of the team, but inside the community, will make it better and bigger. Russ?
Yeah, like I said, for me, I think we've kind of echo what G-Man has said around. We've almost got our own canon that's going on. We for me, it's about what's good Star Trek. If it's good Star Trek, then it feels like it. It's got a place within the mod, and I don't necessarily. I'm not the judge on what's good or not bad Star Trek. It's just if it's got a place and it fits narratively within our story and what we want to do, then I'm happy for it to be in there. There's some really good stuff in Beta Canon. There's some really good books out there. There's also an element of, in order for me to personally to add it into the story, I've had to have been able to have read it and know what it's actually about. So a lot of people, come up and say, why isn't this obscure element in? It's sometimes a case of I haven't read it. I have no idea what it's about. So the chances of me adding it in are fairly limited if I haven't had a chance to look at it myself. But I think if it's good Star Trek, then it's got a place in. I don't have a lot of time for people who go, oh, I hate the new stuff. I hate the old stuff. It's for me. People may or may not like it. It may not be the same as it was when they were growing up, but it's still Star Trek. It's still got a place. Someone's still gone to the effort to make it, and they're not. No one's deliberately trying to do anything bad. I don't think. So we kind of take everything that's available to us and kind of fit it into how we want to do it. Examples of even if the Kelvin verse stuff, which isn't my particular favorite branch of Star Trek, but we've included some of the ships in there. We've got some events in there that loosely tie into it a little bit. So we're kind of in a position now where we can kind of go with what we think works and what tells a good story.
I have to admit, specifically because you mentioned the Kelvin timeline, even though I have I think a couple thousand hours in Stellaris now, I was recently playing a Federation playthrough and suddenly got a Kelvin Enterprise, and I was very surprised because that's never happened to me before. It also wasn't my cup of tea from the films that came out, but it was a really interesting to go, oh wow, there's still things even as a very experienced player that are surprising to me, or things that I've never seen in the mod. suddenly appearing. So yeah, that was very interesting.
It's so funny to me that you say this, Jamie, because exactly right, that model was really hard to me to let him into the mod. I'm not a big fan of that Calvin designs and the story and that. It was really hard to me to say yes, okay, it's fine. Let's the model in the mod. It's anyone will like that. So it's not always that we have to love everything at this any assets we have in the mod, but sometimes we just accept that it's part of Star Trek.
Isn't there also a mod that takes out all the discovery stuff?
Yeah,
I think I've seen something like that. Yeah.
So actually, I wanted to that's actually a good segue, a good way to transition into the Star Trek New Horizons community as a whole. So the community is very active on Discord, and you get a lot of feedback every day about the mod, including through things like bug reports and just general comments and requests for you to add things. Several things that have been requested or given feedback about from the Discord have been also added and or updated in the mod. In general, how do you handle receiving feedback, and is there a set process in place for dealing with this kind of feedback and suggestions?
Essentially, it's me, Russ, or another dev reads it, and if it sounds good and doable, then it gets added. But if it's something that will take a hell of a lot of time to add, then it'll be put on a list, and it might get added, might not, essentially. So a lot of it is more of we read through it as much as possible, but don't take offense if it doesn't get added for whatever reason.
Okay. What are some things that you often get as requested from the community or feedback from the community that you're unable to add or change in Star Trek New Horizons due to the nature of Stellaris, such as limitations of the game engine, etc.?
I have one example, Science Beginning, Science Releasing. We had 3 factions. That was the humans of Federation, the Klingons, and the Romulans. That was very first 3 factions. And 2 of them had a cloak, but not in the game, but not in the mod. So the best example is, to me, cloaking. We simulated that for about 8 years with the feature of evasion mechanic until Paradox finally decided to implement that cloaking in the base game. So this was so often suggested, hoped for getting in the game, and we had no chance to add that without a change of the base game. So I guess Russ have a lot of other ideas like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that people always ask around it. First of all, one of the things people often say is, "Can you sort out performance?" I promise anyone who's listening that is absolutely something we're looking to focus on doing, and it's something that we're constantly looking to improve. So that is absolutely something that we're committed to doing. Another feature that I guess people ask, and this one's very subjective. People will often say, "How do we?" So people have actually started asking, "Can we make the game slower again?" Which is always quite amusing to me. That comes up quite frequently. The other big one is around technology research. People will often say, "Can we make the speed of technology faster, slower?" And the thing is, it's so subjective around how that works based on people's individual choices. So again, we're trying to look at different modes where you can kind of follow canon a little bit closer, so that you can do that. You can pick your technology. Your technologies will kind of fall in the right area. But again, it's a very subjective one. We don't want to pin it down so that it will always be the same speed every time, because part of Stellaris is there's differences in your playthrough, and we don't want to take that away. And the other thing which did actually make it into the game recently is, again, a lot of people were really keen that they like playing a very canon-based story. So they like the events to play out the way they do on TV, which is cool. People can play different ways. So one of the things that I'm quite pleased we managed to get in recently was an option at the beginning of the game that heavily influenced any decisions that get made, any random choices to follow what happened on the TV shows. And that's a choice that players can make at the beginning of the game to do that. And that's something that is on my list of things to do to further increase that across all of the events, so that if people want that option, they've got that option. Other than that, I would love the team behind Stellaris to look at warp travel and how that gets made more realistic, because at the moment it feels like on the original version of the game, warp travel was a lot more realistic to how it is in Star Trek. They removed those features for, I think it was performance reasons. I'd love to see them look at what we can do around that, because that'd be something I'd love to get into the game, a more realistic travel system. Yeah, and those are my kind of key things that I've seen requested into me that I'm keen to work on and have worked on over the past.
I remember back then development Slack from Stellaris for the closed beta testers. They discussed the reason to remove the different drive methods as like jump drive and warp drive and stay on the hyper jump travel type. The reason was the pathfinding process of some ships, as like science ships, and warp drive and in the other one could not work properly for Stellaris because it's not finding the way fast enough. So that was a reason to remove it, because they had no idea to fix it. And just for that, they removed the entire features. Yeah, it's sad. I hoped it come back anytime, but yeah, it's gone for 9 years, so it will never come back. Maybe in Stellaris 2.
That's a shame. Speaking about these questions and feedback from the community, is there anything that you are very tired of hearing?
There's a few questions. I mean, tongue in cheek. I kind of most of the community is pretty good, and we've got a really good community. One of the things that makes me laugh a little bit is, things like what's better, and is what's the difference between this mod and other mods. I'm sure people can guess which mod that is. It's like, go play it yourself. I'm not, that's, for me, it's, people can make their own choices. It's kind of like, if you hear that question quite a lot. The other thing is the game's broke. People say, oh, the game's broke, fix this or fix that, and it's like, come on, tell me more than that. I can't. You've got to give me some more information, and it's sad to say, our Discord group is brilliant, but Steam is, some of the comments on that Steam board are just hilarious. Or particularly after vanilla updates, and we post and say, look, vanilla's updated, the game will crash, wait for us to update it, and then you get just a whole community worth of pages worth of people going, it's crashing, why is it crashing? You're like, oh my god. Why it happens every time. It can't keep coming as a surprise that this happens. But hey, it makes me laugh these days. It used to make me a little bit grumpy, but I'm old now, so I'm much more chill.
I also like the people who ask, why is a mod not working? I only have 12 other mods at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
At just 30,000 files, it have to be fixed in a minute, huh? Right now.
Yeah, can't be so difficult.
Yeah, it's every time the same. It's recycling it. So we should make a better auto answer tool which just responds in time. Every time the same message. Just read actual current version. Please roll back. Please delete settings.txt or things like that. It's always the same every time. And this is why I now understand companies outsource services to India.
Yeah.
Do not have the issue for that.
Absolutely. I just want to wrap up this interview by having you each say kind of one thing that you would love to say to the Star Trek New Horizons community at large. So let's start with Russ. What's one thing you would like to be able to say to everyone in the community?
Just a massive thank you. Thank you for downloading and playing the game and sticking with us and kind of letting me take what has been a hobby into something that's just a really fun thing to do. So just a big thank you for me. The players are incredibly loyal, interact with us in a fantastic way for the most part, and yeah, you've made what could have just been a simple small hobby for me something that's really fun and a really cool way of spending time.
Thank you. Locutus?
I would say play more Borg. Okay, but honestly, play as we have fun with it and let others play as they have fun with it.
Perfect. Short and sweet. How about you, G-Man?
To be honest, it is a pleasure to have a hobby which people make say thank you to uploading that, to maintain that. It really consumes a lot of my time, my spare free time, and I hope I can do this for a very long time ago. I will promise at any time in the future when nobody is developing Star Trek New Horizons anymore, it will become open and free for anyone to download it forever.
Perfect. And how about you, Carrie? Is there anything you'd like to say to everyone?
Pretty much what same as what Russ said. We're just doing it for the enjoyment of seeing you guys play the mod, pretty much.
Perfect. Okay. As a group, we also wanted to talk a little bit about how you became interested in Star Trek and your experiences kind of with the franchise. So can everyone talk a little bit about first how you became interested, if there was somebody who introduced you to the franchise, or if there was kind of a situation that introduced you to a franchise? Can you also talk about that a little bit? And then would you also talk about your favorite film or show that you like the most within Star Trek?
I remember that I was laying in our living room and watching the TV show Star Trek TNG, The Next Generation, and my mother asked me about, is it look like as realistic when they warp driving and the stars is flying around the ships and so, and I pretty much had no idea. I was 7 years old or 6 or something. I never forget that situation. It's 30 years ago, so no, it's more, 35 years ago. It's a really, really a strong memory, and I can remember that I always loved to watch the TNG TV show, but I never could join the original series. It was so like kind of stupid acting, like a cowboy or like something like that. I never could join that. It was at the same time in the same program in the television. So I watched both, but I really loved TNG. And later then I enjoyed the Voyager and the Deep Space Nine TV shows, and I love both of them. The many people love just the DS9. Some hate Voyager. Maybe someone loves Voyager too, but I never met anyone. But how is it to you, Locutus?
For me, it started when my father came back home. He switched on the TV to take a little nap, and what was running was Star Trek. At very first, I think TOS, and then it started with TNG, and that's when I watched TNG. Yeah, and what was the other question?
Your favorite show?
Yeah, easy. TNG as well. I mean, it's when Locutus was introduced.
Yeah, Locutus is a legendary character.
And
I ever loved the episode where Picard was in the dream with the flute.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Inner Light.
Inner Light. Oh my god, my memories.
When you introduced that flute song into the game, that was very cool.
I get chills every time I'm playing and I hear it.
This was made by Cornholio, the other guy who wanted to join today but can't. I'm really hoping he is joining anytime in the interview. He is a musician. I know him from Star Trek Online, and it's an old friendship. He helped us a lot for kinds of acoustic things like music and voice creation. The very first voice recordings we had, he had reworked and mastered, and so we brought it into the game as like he made the rework of the Inner Light. Yeah, he made, reworked, and remastered the Inner Light song we already use today and past early version of Star Trek New Horizons.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to my interview with him. To be able to talk about all of the music.
He announced to me recently that he will rework our entire music again.
Ooh, you've piqued my interest.
Oh. Yeah. He never was joined the PDG as like Locutus or Russ or Carrie. He was always a freelancer, a contributor outside of the PDG team. He was since the beginning at the side of our community, I would say. Yeah. Russ?
Yeah, for me, it was something that So my mum would work in the evenings. It was something I'd sit at home and watch TNG with my dad. It's pretty clear that I'm of the same generation as G-Man and possibly Nikitas.
Yeah, we at the same age.
Yeah, of the same generation of people. So yeah, I grew up watching TNG. Something I'd have fond memories of watching it with my dad over on BBC Two at dinner times, and it was just something that's kind of grown from there. And it was kind of always an escapism for me. It would be something that you'd watch and you kind of drift off into those worlds. And I had all of the Playmates toys when I was growing up. I'd collect them. Have your own little adventures, and it was just something that I'd grown up. And it was something that whenever I'm feeling, something that I need to get away from or to take your mind off real world, Star Trek has always been something that's there to help me do that. For me, my favorite series will always be TNG, but it's closely followed by DS9. I just thought as a series, DS9 got better and better, and kind of its final arcs were just some of the best TV that I remember seeing as a kid growing up. And then I've got a special love for all of this. There's no Star Trek I really hate. I don't necessarily get. I know fans can like and dislike things, but I don't really get anyone who feels they need to hate any of the Star Trek. It's just different. It's got something. It has to change as time goes on, but at the same time, people are free to like it as it is. For me, it's all one thing. It's all something that you can just turn off, enjoy, and watch, and it has a different reason. Even the newer stuff like Lower Decks and Strange New World. I've now converted my wife to watching, and we kind of watch it together. So it's all got kind of a special place for me. Favorite movie is definitely First Contact, because for me that was watching my heroes and kind of those people who I watched on the small screen on their first kind of big screen adventure. I know Generations was out there, but for me, First Contact was that real first kind of, wow, I'm watching Picard, Data, Riker on a massive budget screen. So yeah, that for me, that was always kind of, and that was when I was, I was still young. So being taken to the cinema by my parents to watch that was just such a cool experience that I'll never really leave me.
Do you want to know what's ironic about that statement? This is now the 9th interview that I've done. Without fail, everyone has mentioned First Contact as being kind of a film favorite. Not necessarily any of the other big ones, like for example, any of the TOS movies, both the good and the bad. People always come to First Contact. So, of course, Locutus in his interview was like, yep, it's got Borg in it. It was going to be First Contact. And to be honest, most people have reacted that way as well. And I thought there might be more of a spread of like, oh, I really liked Undiscovered Country, or, oh, I'm kind of that weird one that likes one of the ones that are quote unquote considered bad. And yet, without fail, everyone has at least had First Contact as vying for their favorite film.
Yeah, I like that too. I couldn't say it's my favorite. I would say it's my favorite motion picture kind of cinema movie, yeah. But I really love TV shows more than cinema movies. Cinema movies are too short to have long time fun.
That is true. Yeah, you get 2 hours and then the story's over. Whereas at least, especially in the 90s, you got 24 episodes. You got 12 hours. 24 hours. Hold on, they were an hour long.
I bet no one said that Section 31, whatever the heck that was.
Hasn't been mentioned yet.
I
What
must
was
say,
the movie with the sonar?
Oh, and the
with
whales,
the
right?
Sonar, resurrection thing.
Yeah, was it Resurrection?
Insurrection.
Insurrection. Right.
In
I watched that movie in the cinema 13 times.
in the cinema.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. on one day, 3 times. Today I can't say why exactly,
You worked there.
but back then I don't know what it was. It was just so good. Or the movie when he slams into the scimitar. What
Really
was
good.
that? Yeah, I watched that movie nearly a dozen times as well. It was so good. The moment when he slams into the scimitar, awesome.
Nemesis did have a good battle.
Yeah, Nemesis was it. Yeah, exactly. I forgot it.
Yeah, the other was Data. Nobody mentioned in this interview Star Trek Enterprise with Archer.
I liked Enterprise.
I
I
like
just
the
had
to be fair, I really liked the song of Enterprise. That's why that's what got me the most every time watching it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a really good theme.
I just was wanted to say we have as very first canon
Sure.
things in Star Trek mod is the Enterprise series
Of Archer.
with Archer. So the City event and stuff like that. So the Babel, Demon, and all these crises, the early crisis for the Earth when you want to found the Federation. And often people ask me, "How can I get Federation?" I say, "Just play." As like you would watch the TV show and you will get it for sure, not for 100%, but for 95%, and it will happen. And I really remember one single request for this, how I get the Federation. I said, my common answer, just play as like you watch the TV show. What TV show was the end? Star Trek Enterprise with Archer. I don't know that show, so it becomes into the conversation, and they are asked, "What is this TV show? It's where it's streamed, where I can look." And I was a bit confused. So why the heck anyone play Star Trek mod and have no idea about Star Trek TV shows? It's a bit kind of arrogant. Okay, I understand because I'm a nerd. I know everything about Star Trek. And there will be join people who have just maybe watched one or two, or maybe not even all of Star Trek. But he had no idea about that particular TV show. And he also had no idea about any other TV shows. So he have to watch everything. And he asked me for in what chronologically row he have to watch all these. It was so outstanding, strange to me that nobody have idea about Star Trek and play our mod, but the solution key to play the mod correctly, or maybe the easiest way, is to watch every single Star Trek show and make decisions better in the event and crisis in the mod.
Absolutely. I mean, especially with the canon modes that you can select kind of in the beginning as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, play like you see in the shows, and most of the time things will go well for you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It was difficult back then as we made the Borg playable. We had no idea what the Borg was how big they was evolved, or how strong they was. I think there are some novels about that. We have to break that. Locutus, is our current start from Borg a good decision? Or it's maybe better to make it bigger or smaller or something, anything on kind of change to make it better?
You mean good in the relative position of the galaxy, or
In the canon position.
oh well, it depends on what canon. I think there exist several origin stories of how they were created, but I think
There is none of them is off.
yeah. All of that is off screen. None of that is either in the series or the movies.
It's just 7 of 9 talked about the dark era of the 800 years ago or something like that. But more than that, it's off canon. So I often think the book should be bigger, or maybe bigger, or maybe smaller. I have no idea. It's strange.
I mean, in
It's
the
like-
year when Voyager is going through the Delta Quadrant, or the time the Voyager is going through it, the Borg are pretty big already, and we start at 2150, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there are also episodes of other species, the Vatvor, who encountered the Borg as well many years ago, and they basically said, "Oh yeah, we know the Borg, but they are no threat or so." So
Yeah, they slept 800 years, something like that.
Yes,
is it?
exactly.
Yeah, what was it? 800? 800? Yeah, right. Okay.
We have
Yeah, okay.
two-
So 2150, they should have been bigger, but in case of how to start the Borg in the game, it's pretty okay.
It's a pretty much hard and deeply focused in the alpha beta quadrant, and a much higher focus to the Federation, which is obvious. Yeah, we have the most canon information about these areas and these factions. I think it's good to play with, good to start with, and over the years it doesn't complain a lot about the correctness in this kind of start positions and start preferences. It's good to play with. It's good to have a multiplayer match. You can compete with other people, and if we would change that a lot to make it more canon, is as like 8472, the Undyne, they are not balanced to play with other people in the galaxy. It's maybe not playable then when we make everything lore correct or canon correct. But I really think about that.
I think it would be difficult because I remember specifically in Voyager, because they have, I mean, the territory they have in the Delta Quadrant covers thousands upon thousands of stars, and it's physically impossible to have that in Star Trek New Horizons because, I mean, the largest map we have is 3,000 stars, and they're supposed to have multiple thousands of stars. So you'd have to make almost, if in terms of numbers, you'd have to make most of the map Borg, which just would
Yeah.
not work.
Yeah. It's like you have to take a ship and click it right over the entire galaxy and route it to the Borg. And it have to take in-game 70 years. Oh my gosh, this wouldn't work.
Aside from Stellaris not being able to handle so many stars at all.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
maybe I have the hope in Stellaris 2 they will have much bigger maps. But I'm pretty sure they will use the same engine, the Clausewitz engine, which is not able to make that happen. Oh.
Locutus had said that one of his favorite characters is Locutus from the TNG shows. And I was just wondering, Russ, if there were any characters in the Star Trek franchise that particularly stood out to you, that maybe, especially growing up with them, you saw them as maybe a role model, or maybe who made the shows even more enjoyable, and maybe they're the reason why you're such a big Star Trek fan?
I've got a few. I mean, Picard for me was always kind of the kind of stereotypical kind of hero captain that I grew up with. He was always kind of, so, you know, the episodes when it kind of showed his flaws, or when he was assimilated and became Locutus, was like just such a massive shock to me, because this was like, oh my god, this is my hero, and what on earth has happened to him. So he was probably the main
Better
one.
version of Locutus. Come on.
I thought you might say that. The characters who had an influence. I mean, can I be cheeky and say Seven of Nine had a bit of an influence? I'll leave on that note.
Well, on a teenage boy growing up watching
Oh,
Voyager. Oh
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, that's such a surprise, Russ.
Yeah, can you imagine? I mean, I thought Cisco was such a cool captain as well. One who doesn't perhaps get a lot of mention, as times I just thought the way that he played was so different as a captain. Really, there was an early episode of DS9 when he punched Q in the face or something like that, and it was just like, wow, okay, that was this is a different show I'm watching now. So yeah, Worf and Data, they're all kind of those early. The TNG is just such, and one of the things that perhaps other newer Star Trek could learn from those older TNG is that, particularly, I think Discovery didn't do an amazing job of it, as much as, you know, it wasn't a bad series, but TNG had such a cast, and the crew was all part of it. You kind of grew up loving all of them, and that's something that, you know, as Trek continues, it'd be nice to see that perhaps they take influence from that more, and just have more of, you know, a group of characters that you really enjoy, rather than just maybe one central character. I think Strange New Worlds is going better in that direction. I quite like quite a lot of the cast of Strange New Worlds, that they're a good cast together. But yeah, for me, it's got to be some of those classic, you know, Picard, Riker, Data. I mean, Data was just such a fantastic character, you know, funny without meaning to be funny at times.
I think Russ is right. In my legendary hero is Julian Bashir. I really love that character. But in Discovery, as Discovery was shown up as first time, I really fall in love with Lorca. He was so bad.
A great character.
Awesome. The mirror universe wasn't so clearly to me, but yeah, for sure. But I loved him as captain for that ship, for the TV show. Cool. Carrie, do you want to finish something?
Picard was my favorite, pretty much, and probably TNG was the most popular one. That's pretty much with me anyway. You pretty much covered all of what I was going to say anyway.
I can only agree with the statement so far. I really enjoyed, especially the character and some of the character building that was done on TNG, especially kind of going back later and then as an adult to rewatch kind of those series. I really liked how well fleshed out those characters were that you didn't necessarily see in some of the other shows. I mean, yes, you did get some of that in Voyager, for example, and Deep Space Nine, but you didn't necessarily get as much of it for the minor characters in like Enterprise, for example. I mean, I think mostly we got the bridge crew, although I think they wrote Lieutenant Reed. I think at one point they were thinking he was going to be like a gay character, and he was going to be kind of the first LGBTQ character, and then kind of that never materialized, and there was still a lot about him as a character we didn't know. And while there was progression on the show, I felt like it wasn't necessarily done as well as previous Star Trek shows. Then again, they didn't have as many seasons, so that could also be part of it. And then I also have to admit that the modern Trek, maybe now with the exception of Strange New Worlds, although Lower Deck has been doing a lot of fleshing out of their characters as well, but kind of New Trek, as some people will call it, is also not necessarily as developed. I mean, I remember, I guess, spoiler alert for those who haven't watched Discovery, when they're fighting the whole AI control thing, and there's a character who sacrifices herself, who's part of the bridge crew. I couldn't tell you anything about her to save my life, and we were finally going to get an episode about her, and then it ends in her sacrifice, and so we don't really learn much about her over the course of this episode, and then she's suddenly gone, but she's been part of the bridge crew for a while. So I really liked how the character development was done in the 80s and 90s that I think, as Russ said, maybe New Trek could learn a little bit from.
Yeah, I'm really happy we had this today. Thank you all.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time and taking out your time on the 31st of October, potentially Halloween, if you would have done anything for that. And if not, just a Friday evening. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. It was
Thanks,
a
you too.
pleasure.
Thanks all.
Thank you very much for listening to this interview, and thank you very much to Russ, G-Man, Carrie, and Locutus for their time and insights. If you would like to see more of the developers, join me this weekend, 16th and 17th of May, for a multiplayer game between some of the developers, including G-Man, Carrie, and Locutus. It will be hosted on this channel. More information about the time is being shown on your screen now. Also, join me tomorrow as we finish this interview series with a group interview of experienced players who look back at Star Trek in gaming, Star Trek New Horizons, and what they would like to see in the future.